Medicine in general works, but it could work better.
And I think we'll look back to this time and say we were far behind. It's not just that we need to move the goalposts of healthcare in the future. I think we have to completely redraw the playing field. In the 26 years I spent working for NBC News covering wars and diseases and disasters around the world, I found that process affected my priorities and my perspective on life. My father died with Huntington's disease. My brother is now very sick with it, and I tested positive for the genes, which means that I will now develop the disease myself.
It changed a lot, a hell of a lot. I was falling, I was bashing into things, I was dropping things, and I thought I was going crazy. I started my first injection on the 10th of June, 1991. I would have been in a wheelchair probably if I hadn't got onto the Copaxone.
The anti-gravity type machine is important. People, when you say I go to a biokinetic facility, they say, do you do much different? No, you don't do anything. You try and act and be as a normal person might be. Life becomes contained by pre-planning all your moves. The challenges to MS, probably the biggest one that affects me, is probably needing a bathroom facility at short notice, and the bladder control. And it's a combination of bladder control and speed of movement. And between the two, you're either going to lose it or you're not going to get there in time. And in that combination, there must be a solution.
I take a blood pressure tablet every day, a couple of other tablets that I have to take every day. If the Copaxone was in a tablet, I would like that, would love that.
The interaction at the divide between the pharmaceutical industry and the patient, I think, needs to get stronger. As scientists, they know what these things should do, but they don't fully understand how the patient takes that drug and utilizes it to get by. I think if they understood in real terms what it is to have MS, I think they might be different. At the moment, they're just trying to fix a problem which happens at a cellular level. They need to look up from the microscope.
I meet a friend of mine who's a paraplegic every now and then for a drink. And we sit in the lounge of some hotel, and he says to me, "What do you think everybody thinks?" I said, "They think we're having an affair. Nobody can see your wheelchair and nobody can see my scooter. Yeah, we look normal. We are normal. This is not really an illness, it's a condition."
Nothing has been cured in the history of medicine, not cancer, not heart disease, not even the common cold. Let's get away from this idea of people in white coats finding a cure for diseases and all the rest of us over here in separate corners of the room. That is not the way forward in the future. In the future, we have to understand that we will work towards ways of managing my disease and other diseases like it only through interaction and collaboration between the families and the researchers at companies like TEVA.
I was at a talk at a security conference where I saw them reverse engineer how a parking meter worked. And a friend of mine who was also a diabetic said, "Hey, you should do that with your insulin pump." What I discovered was really shocking to me because there really wasn't any security. There wasn't a password, there wasn't any encryption used, and that was scary to me. I could turn off the delivery of all medication to insulin pumps, and I could also change all the therapy settings, which are very, very dangerous. At first, you wouldn't think that the pharmaceutical industry would have a lot of connectivity to the cybersecurity world, but actually we're seeing a lot more in that realm.
One of the challenges I think that pharma faces is
These are very different economies, different demands, different populations with their own demographics. So firstly, I think it's getting a real understanding of what is going on in the local market, what demands and needs will they have, what is the potential for drugs to be purchased, and actually the price point. Another challenge that they face with that is, how do you price in a world where it's very much more transparent? There may be a good reason why a drug would be of a certain price given volume that's used in a certain place, whereas in an emerging economy, if there's a mass population much larger, there's an argument economically for actually a lower cost per unit.
As a diabetic, I have a great amount of data from my blood sugar numbers, how much insulin I'm taking, to what foods I'm eating, to take all this data and to turn it into a treatment plan that can make people more healthy is something that's important. That it will definitely be a business opportunity. The
direction of travel is more personalised medicine. That is certain. It's already happening. The challenge for the pharmaceutical company is, how do you approach development of drugs where there are going to be a number of different variations of the drug needed to deal with a certain individual with certain characteristics.
People have much higher expectations of drugs. They expect them to be completely safe with no side effects and completely effective. Or rather, that's the impression that the regulatory authorities sometimes give, and that's just not going to be feasible.
There's still a period of, I think, the next 2 or 3 years where we'll see the governments and the organisations that buy the drugs really pull back and really challenge harder, given the data now exists, and actually they'll be saying, this data suggests this drug isn't as effective as we might have assumed, therefore we're not paying.
One of the problems with smaller R&D budgets is that the companies can afford less risk. I mean, they have got to produce results, and results that translate into market returns. You as a patient don't always benefit from them reducing their risk.
You've got various drugs approved for certain use. As you find over time, certain drugs have benefits beyond what they were originally approved for. So actually, how do companies best understand that using new data, existing data that's available, lots of different media? And then also in the pipeline, how do you make the right decisions about which ones to invest in? That's a massive challenge. It's a massive opportunity as well, because there's increasingly huge amount of data that are becoming available that can be used to help advise on those decisions. We will see far more sharing of risk between pharma and government and buyers of medicine. And I think that will be a necessity for the commercial success of those pharma companies, as well as a necessity for the governments around the world who will want to encourage investment by pharma in drugs which will counter some of the most threatening diseases and problems that we're going to face.
It's not just that we need to move the goalposts of healthcare in the future. I think we have to completely redraw the playing field. It has simply just not been good enough so far to deal with the problems that we're going to face in the future. We're going to have to completely readdress how we approach diseases.
How do you accelerate, without impacting quality, the process and the time it takes to get through and get a drug to market? If you then add in the world where there's more differential of drugs, there is a real need for companies to be able to make informed and more informed decisions about where they invest and why. The use of data in an informed way to make real advances in prescribing and then applying and monitoring the effectiveness of treatment will become transformational. I think we'll look back to this time and say we were far behind where we now are in, say, 5 to 10 years.
The internet changed everything as far as medical information is concerned. I think that's a good thing, as long as the information is correct and as long as it's not misinterpreted by the people dispensing information, just as important as dispensing the medication.
Today we have a plethora of information that's available, whether it's via the internet or actual research that's available to individuals. What we're going to see more of is the ability for the individual to say, here's what I think my condition is and how can you help me? But I think it's going to involve more than just the physician. I think we're going to start to see other caregivers get involved in this as well. Why can't a pharmacist provide that information? Let's find a better way to utilize those resources that we already have available.
There's a lot of cases where patients can't go directly to the doctor's office. We can leverage technology over the internet to be able to to do some more remote diagnostics to see if it's necessary to go to the hospital or not.
I travel all around the world, and so I get to see the variations geographically in how my particular disease is dealt with. There is a really significant problem, which is a geographical one, that people can be hundreds of miles from anyone who could give them medical attention and doctors and so on. Now, for those people in particular, the possibility of being able to use new technology to bring into their home via video conferencing, that could transform the lives of those people and bring them, crucially, into engaging with clinical trials.
We have patients who come to clinic and give us 6 weeks worth of blood pressure measurements, or they're using their smartphones to record their weight every day, and they present us with a graph that's been produced automatically. Increasingly, I think the devices, the incredibly powerful computers that everyone carries in their pockets will turn into devices that can monitor many aspects of people's health in different ways. I think the issue is going to be that physicians just won't know how to interpret that.
One of the things I notice from researchers is often they can be quite removed from the actual patient. The experts around the patients could be the neurologists and they can be their doctors, but actually the people who are fixing the disease, who are researching about the mechanisms of what's going on, may have never met a patient. And actually I think losing that link to what is happening and what you're actually part of researching and fixing is a really tricky thing.
Where the interaction between the industry and the patient groups has sometimes led to problems is that there's a sense in which the academics need to study the disease, study the natural history, come up with the targets, and then present these targets to the industry, which then comes in like a hit squad, prosecutes the target, does the trial, licenses the drug, and the problem is solved. And experience tells us that that doesn't always happen, and things can go wrong, and that sometimes leads to problems and can make the patients somewhat suspicious perhaps, or lose confidence in the whole process. And I think that the relationship can be dramatically improved if the industry engages early on in a more sustained way.
We have to all collaborate together to engage as one whole. And if we do that, as I say to patients, then yes, of course, we will still have a problem. We've still got a problem, but we can all become part of the solution.
Incentive is not unlike the old poster that was stuck on the sheriff's door, because it places the solution, the bounty on the solution, the payout on it is contingent upon success. Then it's essentially a risk reduction mechanism. The trend is one from us recognizing that crowds have intellect, that groups of people can possess a kind of intelligence that is not necessarily possessed by one.
An organisation that 2 years ago did a series of tests. It researched 100 million genes from memory to understand which genes had a correlation with heart disease. And from that it identified, I think it was 23 genes that had a very close correlation, and it then designed a test which was to use those as predictive analytical measures to sort of spot where someone might have a heart disease.
The beauty of genetics is that we know for sure that all the information we need is captured is present right in front of us. But understanding that information is very tricky. So finding out, using these new novel genetic technologies alongside existing and new ways of studying brains and the lives of people, and marrying that information together, I think is going to be a big innovation in many diseases.
We respond similarly to similar disease threats and similar therapeutic interventions. So, medicine in general works, but it could work better. And part of working better is allowing patients to find one another.
I truly believe that pharmacists are going to be more involved in the health care of the individual patients. An integrated group of people, doctors, nurses, therapists, pharmacists, being a team with the patient is going to lead to better health care down the road.
a community health worker who can walk in with a backpack of information or tools and technology, collect information on an entire camp, and bring that information back when they don't have access to, whether it be cell phone sort of 3G technology, be able to bring that back and be able to help monitor individuals. It's great. We can simply provide low-cost tools today. I can put together a kit of devices that can measure an individual, a mother who is perhaps on the verge of gestational diabetes for less than $200 today US. We know that with mass production, that cost can even come down to, in the neighborhood of $50 to $75.
As a diabetic patient, one of the things that's very exciting is the concept of an artificial pancreas. We have some of these components available to us. We have an insulin pump that delivers insulin and can deliver medication very accurately and very timely. And we also have emerging technology that can continuously monitor our glucose, our blood sugar levels. And there's been a lot of research and a lot of exciting development over connecting those two pieces.
One of the triumphs of modern medicine is that people are living longer, and things that used to kill people don't kill them anymore. That's also one of the big drawbacks that we face, because everyone will eventually have chronic diseases. This is also one of the biggest opportunities, I think, for the pharmaceutical industry, because we're also getting better at predicting what diseases people will get, and a patient who lives for 100 years rather than 50 gives you twice as many years to sell that person a drug.
It'd be brilliant for this disease to be cured. However, there's all sorts of things that they can make step changes to make the patient experience better. So I think the online resource could really help researchers connect with what they're doing and how their treatments are affecting patients' life. And I hope that's a motivating force.
And this is a message I take to families, that they are going to have to take a lot more charge of their own futures and understand that it's their responsibility to ensure that the disease that affects them is addressed correctly. They shouldn't leave it to others to do that. They must engage proactively with the entire discourse in the world, with all of the drug companies, the health departments and their doctors and so on. But that has to come from everyone. It has to come from the pharmaceutical industry just as much as it does from the patient groups.